So the last technique I want to show you is how to make a model like a trabeated, a model of like a trabeated structure or like a post and lintel style of structure. And we're going to do that basically the same way as we did when we modeled this vault, just by kind of laying out curves in 3 dimensions and developing a structure from that. So I'm going to first draw a polyline to define kind of the outline of my structure. And I'm going to draw a series of lines that represent the columns. So I'll just use the line command. I'll use the option to draw them vertical. I'll draw a line up at each corner, like 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. Feet. And then, so those are my columns. Let's say that's kind of the layout of the structure I want to do. And then I could draw like my kind of primary beams, which would be span. I'll just connect end to end. Let's say I wanted to extend those beams past the columns. I could use the command extend. And then I'll enter like a dimension that I want to extend them by. I'll go 4 feet. And I'll just click on the ends of the columns where I want to, or the beams where I want to extend. And then I could take those 2 lines and divide them, and divide by a certain number of segments. Again, that'll just make points so I can trace out where these secondary beams will be connecting. All like that. And in fact, for this kind of thing, because they're all really simple lines, just take the 2 end lines, the 2 end beams there, and you could use a command called tween curves. And like that stands for kind of like in between curves, and you can see it'll make like a kind of average of the 2 curves, but you can also change that to like several in a series. So like that, I could draw like a bunch series like in between those 2 end curves. I'll just press enter, and there we go. Delete these points here. Okay, and we can do the same to extend these guys. We'll extend them by 2 feet. And you can actually select a bunch at a time here. Do them all at once. Okay, and so just like with the vault, we've kind of traced out the lines that define the structure. So there's a couple ways that you can then turn that into like 3D geometry. The simplest way is actually to use a command called pipe. So I could select all my columns, for example, type in pipe, and then I just set a diameter for that pipe. So yeah, let's do 0.25. And you can see that it makes a kind of cylinder like around that curve. And I could do the same for my beams. I'll make my beams a little larger, my large beam a little thicker, and then I'll make my shorter span a little thinner. Okay, and then we can just kind of like shift them up so they're like sitting on each other like that. And so if you then go to rendered here, you can see we've kind of really quickly modeled like a basic trabeated structure, just using like lines in 3D space. So the other thing we could do, we didn't want cylinders, or cylindrical beams, which is most often not what you would really have. You wanted to do like a rectangular extrusion. So if we wanted this to be a certain size beam, what we can do is we can use that command rectangle, and instead of just drawing it in the world plane, we can use the option to draw a round curve. And so it'll ask me, where's the center point? I'm going to use the end of the line. See, it's drawing a curve, a rectangle like around that endpoint. And I'll set a certain dimension here for my rectangle. And you can see also that it's actually like it's tilted the rectangle to be perfectly perpendicular to that curve. And I'll do the same here. Rectangle, round curve, endpoint. Type in my dimensions. Oh, that one's backwards. Okay. And so now if I actually, so I could do one of two things. I can sweep that beam using that cross section that I've just drawn. See, it'll make a rectangular extrusion that kind of defines what that beam would be. But also because the rectangle, the cross section is like, it's drawn in a way where it's oriented perpendicular, we can also just use the extrude curve command. It should pretty much follow that beam for us, follow that line. And then, you know, like before you could do all the same thing. So because in this example, all the beams are like different orientations and different lengths, you'd have to draw each curve individually and extrude each one individually. So I won't do that in this video, but you kind of do the same thing and then just lift the beams up so they're kind of sitting on top of the primary beams, and model, you know, a trabeated structure with rectangular cross sections that way. Okay, so that's going to pretty much wrap up this tutorial, and I'm sure there will be more to come.